So the START trial was the largest so far randomized clinical trial involving techniques that we call PGT version 2, which involve embryo biopsy on day 5 and next-gen sequencing. And this was done in a real-world situation, by which I mean that we include many centers and many PGT labs at the same time. In total, 34 IVF centers and 9 laboratories. So we demonstrated, again, because we have published this before, that if you do PGT, you eliminate the maternal age factor on implantation. So for instance, in the younger group and on the older group of the PGT, both had the same implantation rate, about 50% or so. Meanwhile, in the control group, it went from 50-something to 37%, a significant decrease, which is what you typically see when you don't do PGT.
So PGT-A is used widely in some locations, in some geographies, particularly in the United States, where it's used in maybe over 40% of IVF cycles. That USA data is collected by SART, the Society for Assisted Reproductive Technology. When we look at that SART data, you see benefits in terms of live birth per embryo transfer, that's really clear, reduction in miscarriage, particularly live birth per embryo transfer for patients over the age of 35.
So in both the trial and the SART data set, we see similar results in pregnancy rates in the young group. Meanwhile, in the older group, we see significant improvement in ongoing pregnancy rates per transfer. What they differ is in miscarriage rates. So in our trial, we saw very low rates of miscarriage in both groups.
First of all, there was no really standardized procedure for biopsy. And as we know now, biopsy can have some impact on PGT-A results. Also, what we know now as well is that you can have subjectivity in aneuploidy calling between labs, even between individuals. And I think that is one of the things that we could have gone back and standardized better with the STAR trial, because we saw variability between labs. And the other thing which is quite surprising looking back upon it now is that mosaicism wasn't called.
It could be that in centers in which they have done PGT for a long time and they had good techniques, I think this is indicating that the technique of embryo biopsy is not standardized, and because of that maybe some embryo damage is being done. This would be more obvious in the younger patients because they have lower aneuploidy rates than in the older ones. Meanwhile, in the older group, because the aneuploidy is much higher, the beneficial effect of embryo selection outweighs the potential negative effect of the biopsy. So we think that in the very near future we'll be able to improve these results even in young patients due to at least 2 new developments. One is non-invasive PGT. By that, the embryos are sampled from the culture media, and we can do now DNA analysis. That is yet not 100% correlated with embryo biopsy, but we're getting there. So probably very soon this will be available, and therefore there will be no negative effect of the embryo biopsy. And also the variability that maybe was introduced by having 9 PGT centers analyzing the samples all with their own methods, that could also be avoided in the future with now algorithms and artificial intelligence that would do the analysis automatically.
If you look at the STAR trial, under 35 age group, well, there was no benefits in terms of live birth per embryo transfer, but we did no harm either. The other thing which is beneficial and the STAR trial shows it, is that with single embryo transfer, you can have successful outcomes whilst avoiding the really difficult outcomes associated with multiple embryo transfer and multiple births. So for patients over 35, the STAR trial gives some really clear information. We know that next generation sequencing is close to 100% accurate when it comes to meiotic, so full copy, whole chromosome gain or loss changes. And for those patients, you can see quite clearly that the outcomes are worse without PGT-A, statistically significantly worse. And for those patients, I think it may give some real clear direction to say that, is it ethical, is it really clinically useful to transfer those embryos knowing that they have full chromosome changes? And I think the STAR trial advises patients very much in that way, that PGT-A is beneficial.